12.1 The Fall of the Twin Towers. An eyewitness account.
The day started much like any other day. I got on the subway. We came across the bridge and I remember noticing what a lovely day it was with the bright blue sky. I remember coming out of the subway as I normally did, and I saw a cloud, or what looked like a small cloud, white cloud, and I remember thinking, gosh, that's unusual because this sky is so totally clear. But I didn't think much more of it, and I set off walking to my office. I didn't get far. I got to the first block, and on the corner there were a couple of people looking up, staring up at the tower. So I looked down at what they were looking at and noticed that there what seemed to be, to me at the time anyway, a small hole. And you could actually see a few bits of flame around the edge. And I asked these two people what happened. And one of them said that a plane had flown into it. And I remember thinking, oh, gosh, no, that can't be true. As I walked, there was more and more smoke coming out. Well, I made it to my office and went up to the 16th floor. So I went into the office and there were lots of my colleagues there. Obviously, there was a lot of sort of confusion. And so I went to one of these offices with the clearest view and I looked out and I remember thinking, gosh, I don't remember that. There's a hole in the other side. Quite a few people who were in the office earlier than me that morning, they'd seen both of them. They started telling me about this second one that went down the river and sort of exploded towards them because it came from the south. Soon you could start to see they obviously started to evacuate, and there were just thousands of people walking straight up towards us and just pouring up towards us. I tried to phone family and friends, but none of the phones seemed to work. So I sent out an email. That seemed to be the one thing that was still working. I couldn't speak to any of my family in England. I did speak to my wife once when I first got in and told her to wake up and turn on the television and see what was happening. I was unable to get through to her after that. The sort of surreal goings on, sending these emails backwards and forwards about what was happening outside my very window. And it was while I was writing an email, I heard some screams, and I ran round just to see sort of this huge cloud of smoke, and people just shouting and screaming, it collapsed. This huge cloud of dust came. You could see it pouring up the avenues, and it sort of burst out through Battery Park, right out into the Hudson River. Because I remember seeing lots of the ferries were all doing evacuations, taking people from every point they could, and they just got enveloped in this huge cloud of dust. There was so much dust you didn't know, how much it had fallen, whether it was just the top. I suppose we're all expecting to see something still there. We'd still see the other one standing because it had the big antenna, the big aerial on top of it. So as I stood there watching, I had no idea how long for, and then, of course, the other one collapsed. You could clearly see there was a very particular design, these long, sort of slightly ornate metalwork. I remember seeing that sort of explode out, and then you just saw the great big top with this giant aerial on just drop straight down, and you'd see all this other stuff just peeling away from the sides. You could see just each corner of it peeling back and this giant top just smashing down through it. And obviously there was all the dust and everything and more screaming. We all thought, because we'd seen so many thousands of people walking north, that maybe everyone had got out because there was this non-stop procession of people. In fact, I think our brains didn't even think about the fact that there were people inside it. You just sort of looked at it as a building, and you just assumed that there was no one in it. You just don't actually want to think about that. It was, unlike any feeling you've ever thought. There was no panic in the office, and also, very clear acknowledgement that something had changed in the world today, and we were sitting staring at it. It was quite the most incredible thing, and from what was just a normal, lovely New York autumn day, it's just incredible how much changed in that morning.
12.2 The Apollo Project.
10, 9, we have ignition sequence start. The engines are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51.
The inspirational effect of Apollo, which touched so many of us watching from Earth, was largely driven by the pictures which these missions returned. Views of human explorers on an alien world fueled our imaginations. And those images of our home planet, filmed by men who were so far away from home, had an even more profound effect.
All right, you're looking good.
In December 1968, Apollo 8, only the second manned Apollo mission, was sent straight to the moon. It was the first time any astronauts had left low Earth orbit, and if everything went to plan, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell and Bill Anders would become the first humans to see the far side of the moon with their own eyes.
Actually, I think the best way to describe this area is a vastness of black and white. Absolutely no color. The sky up here is also a rather forbidding, foreboding expanse of blackness with no stars visible when we're flying over the moon in daylight.
But it wasn't their unique views of the moon which these missions became most famous for. It was their views of the Earth, rising over the barren lunar surface, which fired the imaginations of us all. Historian Robert Poole is the author of Earthrise, How Man First Saw the Earth.
The NASA head of photography, Dick Underwood, was keen on getting photographs of the Earth. He'd had a lot of experience, but he was pretty much a lone voice in NASA. So although he'd done his best to prepare them for taking photographs, they weren't prepared in any professional kind of way. So when they did actually see the Earth rise from lunar orbit, it did take them completely by surprise, and you can hear the surprise in their voices. Wow, look at that.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, that's pretty.
Yes, it's about the fourth orbit or something, isn't it? And there's a real scramble for the camera and some colour film, I think.
You got a colour film, Jim? Hand me a roll of colour quick. Oh, man, that's great. Where is it? Quick. Down here?
Yes, they didn't have a camera ready. They only had black and white film in the one that they were using. The spaceship had only just turned around to face the right way. They were busy doing something else. And suddenly one of them said, "Look, there's the Earth." What in retrospect was the most significant moment, possibly the entire Apollo program, looking back and seeing the Earth in context.
The fact that no one planned those pictures seems extraordinary now. But the astronauts' encounter with the Earth would inspire future Apollo crews to look back with new eyes on their home planet.
Yes, everything's looking good here, Apollo 9. Okay. We'll try to have your cutoff time shortly.
Apollo 9 was intended to test the entire Apollo flight system in Earth orbit, and astronaut Rusty Schweickart would make a spacewalk to test an emergency procedure for transferring between the Apollo capsule and the lunar module in case the two failed to connect.
Mr. Schweickart, proceed outdoors. Sure, is your camera on there, CMP? It's running. Okay. Proceeding on out.
On board, his colleagues Jim McDivitt and Dave Scott would capture his progress on camera. But as his test began, their camera broke. And whilst they were fixing it, Rusty ended up with 5 minutes outside on his own.
Oh, there, that looks comfortable. Oh, boy, what a view. That's spectacular. It really is.
During that 5 minutes that Dave took to try and repair the camera, which frankly never happened, I held onto the handrail only with one hand, my left hand, and I sort of swung around to get a full view of the Earth and the horizon. Just a spectacular beauty of the Earth. I mean, the blackness is so black, and the horizon is this brilliant, thin band of blue, which is the atmosphere above the blue and white Earth. I mean, the contrast, the reality of what you're looking at, I mean, it is incredibly impressive.
This would have been a wholly personal experience if Rusty hadn't been invited to speak at a major conference organised by the Lindisfarne Association in Long Island, New York, a couple of years later. Despite preparing for several hours, he had no idea what he was going to say until he found himself on stage.
And then I opened my mouth and I talked, and it was as if I was sitting in the audience going through the experience of flying in space at many different levels, actually. The physical level, sort of a technical diary almost, and then finally at a kind of spiritual level. And I had absolutely no plan to do that. I mean, it just came out that way, and by the time I was done, half of the people in the audience were crying, including me.
Okay, pull in.
You look down there and you can't imagine how many borders and boundaries you cross again and again and again, and you don't even see them. There you are, hundreds of people in the Middle East killing each other over some imaginary line that you're not even aware of, that you can't see. And from where you see it, the thing is a whole, and it's so beautiful. You wish you could take one in each hand, one from each side in the various conflicts, and say, look at it from this perspective. Look at that. What's important?
That spontaneous lecture, later titled No Frames, No Boundaries, and transcribed as an essay about the Earth and us, resonated with the burgeoning peace and environmental movements of the time. And the images of Earth that poured back from the 8 subsequent Apollo flights to the Moon continued to raise our awareness of just how fragile our home planet seems to be.
12.3 Metaphorical Language. Conversation 2.
Hi, Annie. Fancy bumping into you here. I haven't seen you for ages.
I know. Time flies, doesn't it?
It sure does. Is your business still booming?
Yeah, I'm slaving away as usual. We're snowed under with orders at the moment, and I'm only just keeping my head above water. Still, mustn't grumble. How's your company doing?
Okay. Things went downhill a bit last year and we had to tighten our belts, but they're picking up now. And how's life in your sleepy little village?
Very nice. It's such a good place to unwind. Look, I must dash now, but I'll be in touch soon and get you round for dinner.
That will be great. Hope to see you soon.
12.4 Metaphorical Language. Complete the sentences. 1.
It was the film 12 Angry Men that sparked my interest in law.
2.
The team's victory was overshadowed by the serious injury of their star striker.
3.
I've had a bright idea. It just came to me in a flash.
4.
I don't trust that guy you met last night. He seems a shady character.
5.
The space station is a shining example of international cooperation.
6.
I'd wondered why Bill's so rude, and then it dawned on me that he was jealous.
7.
There's another article on internet privacy here. It's a hot topic at the moment.
8.
I was relieved to get the hospital test results. It's been a cloud hanging over me.
9.
Don't ask me how to pronounce that word. I haven't the foggiest idea.
10.
You needn't worry about passing your driving test. It'll be a breeze for you.
11.
It was a whirlwind romance, and Steve and Linda were married within 6 weeks.
12.
I knew this would be my new home, and a feeling of happiness flooded through me.
13.
My job interview lasted over an hour. They gave me a really good grilling.
14.
I'm struggling in this job. I think I've bitten off more than I can chew.
15.
Oh, another of your half-baked ideas. You need to think things through more.
16.
Jones's athletics career ended on a sour note when he failed a drugs test.
17.
It's a rather bland autobiography. You don't learn anything very exciting.
18.
Thanks for your suggestions. That's given me food for thought.
12.5. Malcolm Gladwell. The Tipping Point.
Malcolm Gladwell wrote The Tipping Point in order to explain the way social trends suddenly take off, using Hush Puppy's shoes as his first example. Until their comeback in the late 90s, Hush Puppies had been a dying brand, owing to the fact that they were seen as old-fashioned. After a few young hipsters began wearing them in the clubs of Manhattan in 1995, though, the fashion began to spread. When fashion designers started wearing them too, sales boomed, and in the end, the shoes became one of the most popular fashion icons of the decade. This rapid turnaround in fortunes occurred even though the Hush Puppies company itself had played almost no part in it. Gladwell compares such social trends to medical epidemics. Although they may begin with only a few people being infected, provided that these individuals are influential and well-connected, the trend will slowly grow until the tipping point is reached, at which point the rate of spread accelerates enormously. The tipping point made interesting reading for marketing executives, as it showed that while widespread publicity may be achieved by expensive advertising campaigns, similar levels of exposure can be gained for far less as a result of word-of-mouth marketing. What's more, the advent of social media has greatly increased the role of viral marketing in starting social trends.
12.6. Linking devices. 1.
As well as studying English, I'm doing an evening class in photography.
2.
Once this course is over, I'm going to have a holiday in the UK.
3.
I know you're a good driver. All the same, I think you should drive more slowly on this road.
4.
I'm nervous about the exam, even though I've done loads of revision for it.
5.
Seeing as there are lots of sales on, I'm going to spend the afternoon shopping.
6.
You can leave work early provided that you've finished all those jobs I gave you.
7.
I arrived on time in spite of all the traffic.
8.
By the time you wake up tomorrow, I'll be in New York.
12.7. Emphatic expressions with do, does, did. 1.
I didn't need quite so much detail about your operation.
Well, you did ask.
2.
Didn't you think it strange that the car was so cheap?
Well, I did wonder.
3.
It's so embarrassing when Ken tells those sexist jokes.
Yes, I do wish he wouldn't.
4.
You didn't have to challenge Ken in front of everyone.
Maybe. He did deserve it, though.
5.
You shouldn't treat Emma like a child.
Well, she does behave like one sometimes.
6.
I can't believe how violent that DVD you lent me was.
I did warn you.
12.8 Word linking. The potato clock.
I was teaching an intermediate class, and there was a Japanese girl in it, Keiko, who was sharing a flat with an English girl. One day, Keiko came up to me after class and said, "Excuse me, what is a potato clock?" I was a bit baffled and said, "Sorry, a what?" She repeated, "A potato clock." My flatmate told me she has to get one tomorrow, but I didn't understand. I just had to admit to her that I had no idea what a potato clock was, and that she'd better ask her flatmate to explain. It was only later that it dawned on me what her flatmate had said.
12.9 Word linking. The potato clock.
I have to get a potato clock tomorrow.
12.10 Linking sounds.
This is an evening of anticipation and excitement.
12.11 1.
It's an honour to present this award for Best Invention.
2.
The name is in an envelope as usual.
3.
I'll open it and read it out straight away.
12.12 Intrusive sounds. A.
Blue eyes.
B.
2 oranges.
C.
Go away.
D.
My office.
E.
The economy.
F.
3 apples.
12.13
Law and order. Carla and Mike.
12.14 Linking and intrusive sounds. 1. Anna and I are off to eat out in Oxford. 2.
Although it's the obvious answer, it isn't the easiest option.
3.
My aim is to sit on this sofa all evening and watch action and adventure movies.
12.15
JOHNSPEARS
12.16 What do you hear? 1.
It isn't easy to recognise speech.
2.
The sky is the limit.
3.
Some others will leave and say goodbye.
4.
6 students had a grey day.
5.
I scream in an ice-cold shower.
12.17 What do you hear? 1.
I have no notions of danger.
2.
It's important to give children a name.
3.
I told the postman I only accept addressed mail.
4.
We discussed the subject of euthanasia.
5.
Don't tell me that's tough.
12.18 Writing. Alexander Fleming.
Alexander Fleming was born in 1881 in Ayrshire, Scotland, where his father, who died when Alexander was 7, worked as a farmer. After leaving school, Fleming worked as a shipping clerk in London for 4 years. However, he inherited some money when he was 20 and enrolled at St Mary's Hospital School in order to pursue his interest in medicine. On completing his medical degree in 1908, winning gold medal as the top medical student, he joined the research team at St Mary's. During the First World War, Fleming served in the medical corps in France, working in a hospital set up in a casino in Boulogne. There he saw many soldiers die from wound infections and consequently decided to specialise in this area of medicine. Once the war was over, Fleming returned to St Mary's and thereafter applied himself to research into bacteria. On September the 28th, 1928, having just returned from a holiday, Fleming was cleaning Petri dishes in his laboratory so that he could reuse them. Owing to his general untidiness, the dishes had been left out in the warm laboratory for a month and were therefore covered in bacteria, as well as mould. As Fleming picked up one dish, he noticed that no bacteria were growing around the mould, so he decided to study it, in case it proved to be an antibacterial agent. Although Fleming discovered the world's first antibiotic, penicillin, it was two other researchers, Florey and Chain, who found a way to bring it to mass production in 1942, thus changing the face of modern medicine. By the time of the D-Day landings in 1944, enough penicillin had been produced to treat all of the wounded Allied forces in World War II.